Junkie preview show. I am your host, Farah Hannoun, and we're going to take a deep dive at the final pay-per-view ever. UFC 323, headlined by a bantamweight title fight between a rematch, actually, between Merab Dvalishvili and Petr Yan. We've got flyweight champion Alexandre Pantoja taking on Joshua Van. A lot of other fun fights, but it's an end of an era. Obviously, next year we start with Paramount Plus. So final pay-per-view of the year. Pretty fun one. Maybe not the sexiest card in the world in terms of name value. But hey, something I've been preaching on our show, Spinning Backlick, Overreaction Time, is champions staying in their division and defending their belts. And I think we've got the two prime examples right here in Merab Dvalishvili going for his a historic fourth title defense this year on its own. And then Alexandre Pantoja going for title defense number 5. Listen, when we talk about Mount Rushmore, I think pretty much it's been similar. Everybody's had the same Mount Rushmore, regardless of the new champions that we've had, the new superstars, the Alex Pereira, the Islam Makhachev, Ilya Topuria, all the great fighters that we've had. But I still feel like when we look at the Mount Rushmore, it's kind of been the similar guys: Demetrius Johnson, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre. I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments what your Mount Rushmore looks like. But a lot of people still have these 4. And the reason why, what do we look at? Title defenses, right? It's something that, when we talk about greatness, Khabib Nurmagomedov's undefeated, but everyone goes, he's only defended his title 3 times. He retired too early and whatnot. Jose Aldo's up there, and in some people's lists, maybe top 5, top 6, top 7, whoever it may be. But the point being, title defenses obviously hold a lot of value. And that's why I really respect and appreciate what Merab's doing, what Alexandre Pantoja is doing, sticking to their division, just trying to take out all comers. Because you know what, guys? It's pretty hard to stay motivated at the end of the day. I know if you look at the guys that they face, this is another rematch for Merab, and he's a pretty moderate favorite. We'll get into the odds in a bit, according to BetMGM. But at the end of the day, it's the next guy in line, and sometimes it's hard to stay motivated, right? We've seen unexpected guys give people tough challengers, and that's because as a champion, it's kind of hard to stay motivated. John Jones did it, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, Demetrius Johnson. They just knock off the next guy in line every single time. So that's what I love about, the theme of this card. And we did a feature on it. Shout out to Abby and Matt Wells about this. The defending champions who stick to their division in Merab and Alexandre Pantoja. But listen, Merab's got Petr Yan, already beat him, smothered him. March 2023, a fight night main event, 5 rounds, non-title bout. 49 takedowns by Merab. Wasn't pretty. And you could tell in the come up of Merab's winning streak, it wasn't the prettiest performances. He did what he had to do to get the job done. But man, he's looking better every single time. And how good did he look against Corey Sandhagen? Man, rocked Sandhagen on the feet. Nobody had that on their bingo card. Granted that Merab, predicts knockout wins, and we probably take it with a grain of salt, right? But at the end, he's shown improvement in his striking. The guy comes out there to scrap. He finished Sean O'Malley, and his performances just keep getting better and better. So, he's talking about wanting to knock out Petr Yan. People are expecting him to have an even better performance. He is a bigger favorite than he was the first time around they fought. According to BetMGM, he is a minus 425 favorite. And that knockout prop, I don't know if I would encourage anybody to take it, but Merab by KO or TKO is at plus 700. I don't know if any of you would be brave enough to take it. I don't know if I would encourage it. We've got Merab by submission at plus 600, and then Merab by decision at minus 210. So that kind of the most likely outcome, I guess. I did pick Merab, and I am going Merab by decision. I think that's kind of the safe bet here. But you want to play around the Merab by knockout. I mean, knockout TKO could also mean ground and pound, right? So it doesn't have to be a one-punch KO, but still, I don't know if I would go there. I think Merab by decision is a pretty safe pick if you're picking Merab. Petr Yan's never been submitted. He's never been finished. His 4 losses, he's got 5 losses. The DQ against Aljamain Sterling, but 4 other have been by decision. So I think it's a pretty safe bet to go Merab by decision if that's the pick you're going. But yeah, I mean, Yan on the other end, we've got Yan by decision at plus 550, and then Yan by submission at plus 3,500, and then Yan by TKO, KO, or DQ at plus 800. So lots of money to be made on Petr Yan if you're a Petr Yan believer. But I just think that Petr Yan is so good. Like, he's so technical. He's so tight with his striking. His grappling's not bad at all. But we know the type of grappling that Merab possesses. It's a smothering display. And it didn't look pretty against Jose Aldo back in the day. Didn't look pretty against Yan in the first fight. But that's what Merab does. He just kind of clings onto you, holds you from the waist, tries to drag you down. You get back up. You know, this has been a topic, kind of a controversial topic, because Daniel Cormier talked about it a lot. He's like, well, these aren't really takedowns. You know, I mean, technically they are, but he drags you down. You get back up. He drags you down. It's just, it breaks your will in a way. So he might not take you down and keep you down the way that Nisa Makhachev will do, or a way that Hamza Chimaev did to Dricus, but every time you get up and you think like, you know, you've defended well, he just drags you back down. And that's why you see those crazy numbers. He had like 37 takedown attempts against Corey Sandhagen, 49 against Petr Yan in the first fight. And he doesn't care. He's got the cardio to keep dragging you back down to the mat. So I expect a similar approach from Merab here. Just, you know, smothering Petr Yan. Petr is dangerous with his striking. He's got some really nice boxing, goes to the body. I like to see him maybe kick the legs of Merab. Merab has that forward pressure. Try to make Merab hesitant to close the gap. The clinch work, the Muay Thai, the dirty boxing, those will all do Petr a lot in this fight. But Petr knows exactly what Merab's going to try to do. Now, if Merab, you know, he did willingly stand with Corey, which maybe threw Corey off a little bit. He was able to land on him and hurt him there. You would think that would be the best case scenario for Petr, that if Merab spends too much time on the feet, he does have a tendency to get hit. Everybody pointed at the left hook that he was susceptible to, I guess, pointing to his Marlon Moraes fight, pointing to the Henry Cejudo fight where he got clipped in those two fights. You nitpick, right? That scene, it's like the head kick with Ilia Topuria, right? Everybody looks at that and goes, oh, he's susceptible to high kicks. You kind of nitpick at those guys who have looked so dominant throughout their wins. So yeah, I think this fight, I'm pretty confident in Merab by decision. But hey, Petr knows he's got to keep Merab off of him. He knows the type of fight that he's going to have with Merab. It's 5 rounds. We all know Merab's a cardio machine. 4 weight cuts in the year. Is that going to impact him at all? He always looks so gaunt and drained, but comes out there the next night and he's an absolute machine. Lives up to his nickname. So going to be exciting to see what kind of adjustments Petr made. Remember, Petr said he was at 50%. Merab told him excuses. He said he couldn't really throw his left hand, I believe it was. So, you know, excuses, yes, but we've seen a lot of cases where Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena, you know, that springs up in my mind automatically. She said, you know, she was hurt and going through a lot, and then in the rematch handled Juliana there. And then we saw with Alex Pereira, granted the fight barely lasted with Magomed Ankalaev, but he spoke out about injuries. But hey, listen, both sides always have stuff. I believe John Woods said that Merab was going through some injuries too in his first fight against Petr Yan. They always are. If you're Merab and you're fighting this often and you're going for 4 title defenses, and you have to be carrying some sort of injury that people don't know about. It just depends if you vocalize it or not. So either way, it's going to be an interesting fight. I just feel that Merab's grappling is smothering display that he put out the first fight. It's probably going to be a similar outcome, but maybe more activity from Merab rather than just clinging on to Petr, which will give Petr openings. Either way, I'm excited to see it. I know Merab's kind of lapping the division and people might want to see fresh matchups, but who does have the answer for Merab right now, right? I think it's fair to say that regardless of who he gets matched up with at bantamweight, that most people would probably put their money on Merab. But Petr is game, man. He's tough and he's game, and he's not an easy guy to take down. He's not an easy guy to keep down. So, and he'll keep coming. So would be interesting to see. And he's got some momentum now. He's got some momentum. He hasn't lost since he lost to Merab. He's on a fight winning streak right now. So let's see what he can do. We've got a great card. I mean, Nolan King is going to jump on in a couple minutes to help me break down the main event, co-main event, and the rest of the card. But let's take a quick look. Alexandre Pantoja, Joshua Van, Moreno, and Tatsuro Taira. That's a very important fight at flyweight. Could most definitely have title implications. Henry Cejudo's final dance, or is it his final dance? But you know, he he said, Dana's not going to allow me, because he talked about like, if they give me Moreno, Cinco de Mayo and whatnot. And then they kind of seemed to hash things out in the press conference. A little bit awkward doing it publicly, I guess, but seems like they're all good. And I think this is Henry Cejudo's final fight. I don't foresee Cejudo competing again. I guess it depends on the outcome, but even if, nobody wants to like walk away off of a loss, but even if he does lose, that's 4 losses in a row. They're giving him a rising contender in Talbot, but Talbot also has a name. So it's kind of like, at least there's spotlight. You lose to Talbot, where do you go from there? Is Henry Cejudo just going to keep being a stepping stone for the rest of these guys? I highly doubt it. So I do believe that Henry Cejudo, this will be his final walk. And in terms of Talbot, massive opportunity. Hey, he just lost not too long ago to Raoni Barcelos. Rebounded very nicely against Felipe Lima. I saw a lot of people pick against Talbot in that fight. I picked Talbot. I'm not always ready to write people off from one loss. So he looked good against Felipe Lima, but very tough test. I mean, you look at it stylistically, it is a very tough test for Peyton Talbot, because the loss to Barcelos, it was the wrestling, it was the grappling that he couldn't handle. And Henry Cejudo's an Olympic level wrestler. Granted, he has not looked great as of late in the octagon. He does tend to like to strike more, but if Henry Cejudo wants to walk away on a win, he's got to wrestle Peyton Talbot. Peyton Talbot's got some nice, clean striking. And if you're Henry, look, so does Henry. Like, Henry's a fantastic fighter, but I just believe that after he retired the first time and walked away and came back, he hasn't been the same. It was too much time off. He was at the peak of his career. I don't know if it was a money thing. He wanted to get paid more, didn't really get what he was looking for, and just walked away for a while, missed it. I just think it was the biggest mistake ever for Henry Cejudo to walk away. I feel like he could have really built on his legacy. Goes back to what I was saying, right? The title defenses and the all-time greats. And I know that the Cejudo might be on a lot of people's, if we extend it to top 10 and whatnot's list, but if he stuck around and he looked really, really good, if he stuck around, let's say 135, who knows how many title defenses he could have racked up? Who knows what a fight between him and Merab would have looked like had he stayed and not retired. But that's besides 50-50, right? But before we dive into the rest of the card, Nolan's going to join me all the way from Boston. Well, it's all the way from me, but look, he's got the hat. In case you didn't know.
Yeah, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Good. Can't complain. Pretty last pay-per-view ever. I'm in a very festive mood.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, actually, I can understand why.
At least for us here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, but I know I was talking about earlier, it's not maybe the sexiest card in the world, but I was talking earlier before you came on, like, just the champions that defend their belts, like, for a change. I don't know if I'm the only one. Like, I get it, the Ilya, Alex Pereira, Islam Makhachev, double champ, all that stuff is lovely, but I'm liking seeing champions stay in their divisions. And look, Pantoja's going for number 5, Merab's going for number 4. I know it's a tall ask for someone like Pantoja to become a flyweight GOAT when you've got Demetrius, who did it 12 times. But still, I don't know about your Mount Rushmore, if it's changed over the years, but I do feel like it's all been about title defenses at Mount Rushmore. And this is what these guys are trying to do, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like we're in an era where we don't really see that as much, right? And I think maybe for fans that are newer to the sport, they don't really recognize how special certain moments in time become, right? When you have those sort of superstars that have a bunch of title defenses, and then it kind of turns into this game of like, who's going to beat them? Can anybody beat them, right? Like we saw that there was the era with Anderson Silva, with GSP, with John Jones. You know, there was some really just incredible, and like you mentioned, Demetrius, like some just out of this world superstars that were all kind of around at the same time and had these long title reigns. And now it's almost like if you get 1 or 2, you're like not kind of in the minority in terms of getting more title defenses. So yeah, it's refreshing to see Merab rack up some to kind of get that air of invincibility that we don't see. Same thing with Pantoja. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting era, and these two guys, veterans that maybe had to take the longer road to the titles. It wasn't that long ago that Merab was kind of on the UFC's naughty list, so to speak, right? Where he was kind of shunned and he was boring, and they made him fight again, and now he's the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. So Yeah, it's been interesting to see, but both these guys, both champions that are fighting on tonight's card, two of the better representatives of the sport, and let's see if they can continue their reigns and continue to build towards something that's greater than just being a champion.
Yeah, because like shout out to the likes of Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya who did it 5 times. I feel like I'm forgetting someone else. There's someone who's also not too long ago defended, and I always forget them, and I feel bad, and I don't know why I do. But I feel like there's somebody that's also defended their belt 5 times, not like from this recent era. But yeah, I mean, this is why people I don't agree with. Much respect to Kamaru Usman, but the fact that people even call him the greatest welterweight of all time, the 5 title defense has something to do with it, right? Like, because he got up there a little bit. Had he defended his belt twice, regardless of his resume, his name wouldn't even be in the conversation, right? So that being said, what do you feel like Merab has got to do to kind of enter? I wouldn't go as far as Mount Rushmore, but maybe, let's say top 7, top 10 GOATs. Like, how many title defenses do you feel like we're looking at here? Because you look at his resume and it's fantastic, even outside of the title defenses.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's going for him is I think that, especially if he wins tonight, I think most people will have him as the greatest bantamweight of all time. I think I'm kind of already there, but this would, I think, push over maybe the people that still lean towards somebody else kind of over that finish line. So I think he has that going for him. When you start thinking about Mount Rushmore's, at least for me, like my brain automatically kind of goes down the divisions, right? Who was the greatest at heavyweight? Who was the greatest at light heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight? So I think he'll be in that discussion, or he'll come into people's consciousness no matter what. But I don't know. I mean, if he could get up to 5 or 6, which is, like you said, it's very rare to do in this day and age. You know, I think maybe 6 would be to start having that sort of conversation. But we have to see how it goes. I mean, the thing that's helping him, I think, is that like bantamweight is so strong right now. There's not going to be, I know this is a rematch and it's kind of a placeholder sort of fight. You know, the Umar fight would be a rematch as well. But I just think with the way that bantamweight is, like, there's just contenders that are being, you know, the division's really healthy. And I think everybody looks at it and there's no question how good the competition is out there. Like, Petr Yan is a great fighter. Umar Nurmagomedov is a great fighter. Corey Sandhagen is a great fighter. So there's a lot of guys that are really top tier talents. Even when they come off of a loss, you recognize how good they are. So I would say, I don't know, for me, if he could get tonight and 2 more, I think he's certainly in that conversation. But he's definitely the greatest bantamweight of all time in my mind.
I agree. And it's Valentina Shevchenko that I forget. Shout out to Valentina Shevchenko. 7, I believe, was what she had at flyweight before Alexa Grasso beat her. But yeah, I mean, Merab is currently like basically lapping the division. I feel like his fight buildup, I think he did a interview with TSN's Aaron Bronstetter and talking about all the options. And of course, Umar is not one of the options that comes out of his mouth. But what is it, do you think, with Umar specifically? Because I feel like, you know, obviously that was the guy who gave him, at least in the championship era, his toughest tests. So what do you think it is about him? Do you think it's, you know, he's the only one I don't root for. He's like, I root for all my opponents for Umar. What do you think it is with him just not wanting to fight him? I think it's fair to say that because he flat out says it, right? So like, what do you think it is?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not really sure. I don't know if blood there behind the scenes that maybe we. For me, I do wonder how much Merab kind of has in the back of his brain about when he was a contender, right? He was kind of passed over maybe on the Dana White privilege scale. And so I think we see him as a champion try to remember that and try to put, I mean, we saw him even this week. He was putting over Ayman Zahabi a lot, who's, I don't think, was necessarily on the tip of anybody's tongue as the guy that could be next. Maybe we thought he was maybe a fight away. He's had a resurgence for 7 in the UFC's rankings. So he's not somebody that was forgotten, but I think it's interesting that Merab kind of chose someone who is not the most popular fighter or is not the most exciting fighter, but has maybe earned merit and has not had a crack yet. So I found it very interesting he was doing that, but I think it speaks to his mentality that he does not like the idea of some title fights based on popularity. And I think perhaps he felt like that was the case during the first fight. And then obviously he goes out there and it was kind of a tough fight. So I think that might be part of it. Like, unless there's some sort of deeper bad blood that we're aware of. But I think that if I had to play Merab's psychologist, which is, if there's anybody on earth that is qualified to do so, that would be maybe my lean as to why he doesn't mention Umar in the same way that he does the others.
I mean, speaking of popularity, considering the matchmaking we've seen, as played, I think Umar versus Merab would be the least problems, right? Is that fair?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
it's especially if he goes out there and beats Davison. I think it's okay to snap the winning streak of Mario Bautista, Davison, Figueiredo. Who else would have been out there for Umar to fight for it to make sense? Corey Sandhagen. They didn't. Sean O'Malley. I don't think they would have wanted to go the direction of Sean O'Malley for the sake of Sean O'Malley. But yeah, I mean, that looking at the rankings, that's for him to be another shot. I mean, what else would Umar have to do? Look, it's only because considering that Rob's beating everybody. That's it, right? So many other guys out for him. Then I understand Umar maybe needing to do more work, but guys, not everybody, right? So I feel like that's the fight. If both men are victorious in their next fights, that's the fight to make. I mean, you kind of have to go that direction.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think it's based at this point. Again, like with how close that first fight was, it's just that's the most intriguing option that's out, particularly if Umar gets through Davison. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's talk a little about Alexandre Pantoja, another very impressive champion. He takes on Josh. And again, that's another guy who's prior to becoming champion kind of already beat a lot of the guys, and he's lapping the division in his own way. But Josh, exciting young guy. I know the easy way to think about it is experience, and how obviously Pantoja's a lot more experienced, fought the way better competition, because Joshua Van obviously had that massive jump from Bruno to Brandon Royval. That fights year, but I think that this fight made sense. I don't think anyone. We saw Steve Erceg versus Alexandre Pantoja. I don't. He beat Brandon Royval. There isn't too many options for Pantoja, right?
Yeah, no, I think he's kind of in a weirder spot. And I'm not a fan of like fighters moving up in weight or advocating for super fights in that way, but I do think a guy racks up a certain amount of wins and not really a whole lot of other people out there for him to. I'm not opposed to it. So this would have been a real time that I would have been about it, but it just seems like Pantoja's really about it going forward, at least. So he has a tough fight here. I think one of the more exciting, or at least on paper, intriguing flyweight title fights that we've had in a minute. A man who's skyrocketed to the moon with his trajectory of improvement, and the skills that we've seen really throughout his career. I mean, the guy's only been fighting for 5 years, and here he is, title a few years after his pro debut. It's just absolutely insanity. So I don't know how good he's like. He could have got a lot better even since July. So this is a really great fight. If Pantoja gets through him, though, I think we're at that point where it's kind of, we have some guys, right, that have been there for a while that haven't got their back. We got Kopp, we've got Horiguchi. I guess that's fun, right? They've trained together. Mm-hmm. Flyweight on the come up. There's a lot of fighters I think that aren't ranked yet. Will be ranked in the next couple of years. Like I don't think we're going to be in for one of those divisions that have the same top 10 for 3-4 years in a row. So I think on the horizon there are a lot of new challenges, but at the same time, I think if he gets Josh, like this would have been the time to do the super fight. So a little bit of a bummer there, but I'm really interested in tonight's fight because I don't think necessarily a gimme for Pantoja. I think again, for me, fascinating to watch. Josh Van's gotten really damn good. So who knows what a title fight Josh Van will look like at the co-main tonight.
Because when you look at the way Pantoja fights, like I can't, if you're in his corner, like freaking out because he just goes in there and he brawls before he gets to take down, right? He's not the Islam Makhachev or the Hamza Chimaev style of takedown where it's minimal damage and go for a grappling, right? He's a little fireball and just goes in there. I almost feel like he just clashes part of his body, right? His head and like his fists and everything. Yeah. So you would think against a guy like Joshua Van, who's looking for your chin, and when he finds your chin, obviously has produced some great results. Granted, the level of competition I understand, but he's dangerous, right? He dropped pretty late in that fight as well, which is something to look out for, which is obviously impressive, but it's different. Cardio when you're fighting off takedowns is a lot different, right? Like
it will be interesting to see. Pantoja is a bit different beast than anybody that has fought yet. But I did interview a couple of his teammates and his coach, Daniel Pineda, about their relationship with him in 4-ounce fight in Houston. But it was interesting. I wasn't interviewing for any sort of like fight breakdown sort of stuff, but I obviously got their thoughts on how things were going and kind of what their odds were of getting a UFC title for the gym. And it seemed like all three of them, I interviewed them separately, all thought that cardio was going to be the name of the game here for Josh, that he could outlast Pantoja sort of, and that Pantoja hasn't fought somebody that's got sort of endurance before. So I don't know if that peels back the curtain a bit, that they're looking to perhaps kind of not that Josh doesn't always gun for the finish, but maybe have him take the foot off the gas a little bit, thinking that maybe later in the fight it will be when he has the advantage. They seem to have faith in his takedown defense too, which I think will ultimately be what this fight comes down to. You know, like, look good when it's come to takedowns, but at the same time, you know, if Pantoja is just too good for Josh to stop, you know, how is Josh able to stop? Is he able to escape? What kind of rounds are we looking at here? So I think the game plan is pretty clear at this point for what each guy has to do. It's just a matter of somebody coming up and somebody at the top, and who's gonna stop who here.
And I think the odds, just considering the inexperience of Van and the dominance of Pantoja, felt like they would be more lopsided, but Pantoja is 235 and Van plus 190. He is big of an underdog considering what I just mentioned. It's very interesting. I think it's always tough, right? Because the thing that Van's done really well here, we haven't seen with the flyweight division, is fans. Like, he's a very popular guy right now. You know, you look at any posts that are on social media and people are interested. He does very above average interest. It's not to do in MMA. So many fighters and so many interview clips, and everything else that people are trying to at you. Never mind the flyweight division, which has always had this problem. So sometimes it gets a little bit murky with like kind of the hype train thing. Even though I very much think he's earned a lot of the respect that he has, I do wonder how much people, you know, kind of almost think he's invincible in a weird way. So I think the line's pretty accurate though. Yeah, let's look at some of the individual odds of BetMGM. You got Pantoja by knockout or TKO plus 800. That's always interesting because it's like knockout people think is just like knockout, but it's like pound too, right? Pantoja by submission plus 125. His past two title defenses come by submission, Kai Escourt and Kai Kara-France. And then Pantoja by decisions at plus 250. If we look at Van, we've got Van by plus 400, by submission plus 3,100, and then knockout by plus 500. So obviously, if you're a Joshua Van believer, you're going to assume that. But it's interesting that you just mentioned about his coaches and them thinking about last him. So that's definitely interesting to think about. I think the safe pick would be Pantoja by decision, I guess. What are you leaning?
Yeah, I always go with the veterans. Like, I think like my brain wants to go with something that's proven versus unproven. But I've seen the rate of improvement for Van, and he has topped my expectations that he's somebody that's believed in him. So I don't like to go off vibes with fighting. I would not recommend people tail my bets based on emotional reasons. But I am going to lean with him. I think he's special, and I haven't necessarily seen anything like him before. So I think if there's anybody that can make like significant improvement from like a title challenger position to a champion position in the span of 4 months, 5 months, I think it would be. So I'm going to lean with him. I think he's got all the momentum behind him.
So you think, are you thinking like he'll catch him, or are we looking at TJ Dillashaw, Renan Barão? Like,
I'm wild today. I think he's going to get it done in the championship rounds. I think we'll finish him.
Wow. Okay. So I'm assuming by out is what you're looking
see if it comes true, we can clip that. I look smart, and then hopefully, if it doesn't happen, everybody forgets about it, and we can move on.
There you go. So plus 500, Van by knockout is assuming, unless you want to go crazy at Van by submission, 3,500.
No, I'm not that crazy.
So not Prohaska Teixeira crazy.
Correct.
Well, yeah. Listen, Van does have that special thing about him. I know that's why. Look, Pantoja by submission is at plus 125, and the decision's at plus 250. I'm leaning decision just because I feel that Van is going to be very game, but we will find out very soon. But also on this card, and Tatsuro Taira, one contender, safe to say, so right?
So I think it's pretty clear what the UFC is doing here too. I mean, the only other person who could kind of come in out of left field would be Jorge, I think, but I also feel like them putting on the prelims or was it like main card prelims, something like that in Qatar. Just don't think I think the UFC shows their hands a little it comes to what their future plans are when they sort of divisional, doubleheader and on a pay-per-view card. So yeah, I think it's going to be probably the winner of Moreno and Taira.
And both are pretty big stars. I know they were trying to push Taira, and obviously the loss to Royval stopped things a little bit. But when you're looking for fresh matchups for the champion, especially if Pantoja wins, you don't need to do too much to get that title shot, even if you've had a recent loss. For Moreno, obviously former champion, he's a big star, and we know the UFC loves him. So I think it's safe to say. But Brandon, it's kind of hard to know because I picked Albazi when he fought Albazi just because I was coming off of a 2-fight losing streak, split decisions, I know, but also I didn't know where his head was at because he was taking that time off and stuff like that. But back with the wins over Albazi and Erceg and Taira, I guess still some question marks. And it's always hard when a undefeated guy or a highly touted prospect comes off of us. I know he had an change. It was supposed to be Albazi, right? And then probably would have told us a little bit more than Park. But it reminds me of Talbot when he lost and everybody wrote him off, right? When Felipe Lima. I did pick Talbot, but I was a bit like, you don't know, right? Someone suffers their first loss, it's easy to write off. So I feel like that was the case with Taira. Brandon Moreno, considering all his championship experience, guys he's beaten, how good he is, that's he's my pick, but I also just don't know what to expect. How about you? What are you leaning towards?
Yeah, I am leaning with Moreno as well. I definitely think that, Taira, even with that loss, I think it was actually, it's in my head, it proved a lot more about what he's capable of. Go in there and have a fight of the night, fight of the year sort of candidate against Brandon Roy, who's a guy that really the only people that can beat him are title challengers and champions. I think it showed a lot for that, his first, bump in the road, his first adversity as a close split decision, exciting battle against the guy. Just absolutely not to be too pumped with his name, but he's a dog. Brandon is a dog. So for me, that a lot. And I think this is a tough fight for Moreno, and who knows where he is in terms of his career, and his longevity in the sport. Well, he's only 31, but he does have a lot of fight miles on him. So I always wonder when you haven't seen a guy fight, for 9 months, like we haven't seen Brandon, like, okay, did he get, is he the same as when we saw him last? Is he better? Did he regress? Like, where's he at? So I'm interested in this fight, kind of going really under the radar, in my opinion. I'm not totally sure why, but I'm going to lean, I think, with Moreno, just again, based on kind of the opposite I said before, going with what I usually do is I do usually rely on pick the vets who are a little bit more reliable, but Taira is certainly I bet here. I think it's going to be a close decision one way or the other.
Well, let's see. The odds have 125 Taira plus 105 Moreno. Surprised?
A little bit. Yeah, I would say so. But again, I would. It's a bit of a toss-up. So even though it's blowing a little bit to the opposite direction of me, I'm not like blown away by it.
Yeah, but I'm actually a little surprised as well because, I mean, I did bring up the point of I don't know Moreno if he's like back, whatever he is on a 2-fight winning streak, but it's still a little interesting. I get it if Taira was still undefeated, also recently lost, right? It's interesting. I always wonder what goes through their mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's look at individual odds. We've got Moreno by KO or KO at plus 800, Moreno by submission 1300, and then Moreno by decision at plus 150. And then Taira by decision at plus 150, Taira by submission at plus 450, and then Taira by knockout at plus 1300. So yeah, decision either way is at plus 150. So makes sense. Basically a toss-up.
Yeah. The decision's a fairly safe bet. I just feel like especially with 3 rounds where these guys are used to 5 and see them get finished very often, I think going the distance one way or the other is pretty bet.
Split decision?
Yeah, we'll do that. That sounds
Moreno by split decision. Not controversial. A non-controversial decision.
Right. Not controversial. Let's get real.
Less controversial. Either way, like UFC would be happy to give the title shot to either one of them. So there you go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously you have the market who still loves Brandon and Taira. Can't hurt to have more Asian stars. That's an area that the UFC still historically has lacked in, right? Even though the interest is there, they just don't seem to be able to, outside of like Zhang Wei Li. It's been in Korean Zombie, they could bring him there, the headline, but it would be nice for them to have a Japanese UFC champion would be, I'm sure, they're in their cap.
Or how about this? Pantoja wins, Horiguchi's next. I mean, Pantoja and Horiguchi's next. If Taira wins, Taira gets it over Horiguchi, right?
Yep. I think that makes sense.
Crazier things, but I think that's it. Well, let's talk about the one after Henry Cejudo's final fight. Is there? I don't have a prop bet
Allegedly.
of whether it's his. Well, I bet here. Maybe Ghost can help me out, but I don't think DM offered that. But I think so, because come on, like if he loses to Peyton Talbot, like obviously the UFC are trying to Talbot, so it's kind of like for Cejudo, like he accepted Talbot, I guess, because Talbot's got a right. They are on a pay-per-view main card, so there is a little incentive in that regard. Like you beat somebody with a fan base and name value, but the end of the day, it's also them trying to build Talbot off of. So you lose to Talbot, where do you even go from there, right? Are you going to be the gatekeeper of building bantamweight stars? I highly doubt it. So I think it's his final walk, and you win. Talbot's not going to get a title shot, so right, he's got to walk.
Yeah, I mean it's a smart time. I think it's the right time. I think the UFC they've always done it. It's always been a part of combat sport. I feel like in particular more recently they seem to really do like these really flagrant old guy versus young guy matchups. You said where it's almost like the stakes are one-sided. Like I think we saw that. I'm trying to think of some other recent examples, but like when they matched up, like Patricio Pitbull and Keita for that fight that was supposed to happen in Paris, it just felt like there was really only anything to gain for kind of the younger up and coming, right? So I think there's been a lot of examples of that more recently. And it's always been part of it, but it just seems very flagrant. So Henry can play spoiler here. He can go out, kind of take out a hot up and coming. For Talbot, this is the mark that he's been looking for. I think he looked good in the bounce back last fight. He still has to prove himself. He's never really beaten anybody that's of a big name or anybody that is in the rankings. So it's an interesting one. I'm not really sure what to expect. I don't really know how much Henry, if has been considering retirement for a while, how, preparing for the last fight, is that motivating? Are you kind of already, I want to say checked out, but are you so comfortable because you know that there's not really as much at stake here? The mental side of preparation really comes into it, and it's going to be kind of up to Henry to figure out, or I guess the work's already done. How much work did he put in to try to get this done? If he shows up sharp and he looks like someone who has had a really intense training camp and was preparing as if they were fighting the champion, I think he should win, particularly stylistically. But if not, if he's aged, if he hasn't taken this seriously, then which he did look a little bit rough at weigh-ins yesterday, I will say. I think that it will be Talbot's fight.
But I just see path to victory for Cejudo is pretty clear. Saw the Talbot against Tony Barcelos not too long ago. It's not like it happened 6 fights ago, right? So how much really improved period of time? Cejudo, I never understood why he retired in the first place. He's never really been, but he's also fought really good competition, right? Like shame in losing to Merab. Look at what he's been doing to everybody. The Song fight was just a weak ending. He probably expected to get that rematch as his final fight, but they went a different direction. And then the Aljamain Sterling loss was a close one, right? So you can't really give him too much crap in that sense. It reminds me a little bit of Kamaru Usman's losing skid, right? It's like a 3-fight losing streak, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. But he's an underdog. He's an underdog, according to BetMGM, which I'm not going to lie, that is kind of surprising. I know if you just look at it on paper, he's on a 3-fight losing skid and Talbot's a rising star, but Talbot's a -250 favorite and Cejudo a +200. That surprises me, considering the stylistic matchup, considering what happened to Talbot against. I'm pretty surprised. How about you?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. People are just counting him age and kind of that difference, which I get. But yeah, I would. If you had told me to not look, if I didn't know that, and you just asked me to guess, that would be what I would think the masses would be. The lines would be set up.
Yeah, because even if you wanted to make Talbot a favorite, like very slight, but minus 250 is like
fairly sizable.
Fairly sizable. Yeah. Well, let's look at the individual odds here. So KO TKO at plus 800, Cejudo by submission at plus 2,500, and then Cejudo decision plus 350, which is what I'm personally looking at. And then you've got Talbot by decision at minus 110. I know it's not 5 rounds, but interesting. Minus 110 for Talbot, and then submission plus 2,200, and then knockout at plus 275. So
yeah, I hate going into coming on here and saying every fight's going to go the distance, but I feel like this one's a decision as well. You know, I think either way, like whoever you're picking here, like Talbot going to finish Henry. I don't really see that happening. Henry finished Talbot, maybe, but again, I think Talbot is good enough to kind of hang in there. So, yeah, I'm kind of a little surprised, particularly on the Talbot decision line.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to go with by decision. Final fight. Got to assume he's motivated to walk out with a W. He kind of knows what the UFC is doing with this match. Talbot always talks about nobody accepting to fight him. But Cejudo accepting has got to, or I'd like to believe that that's him doing it out of motivation. And he knows that losing to Talbot would be a quote unquote bad. Maybe Talbot goes on to become this, world champion or whatever. But for the time being, considering Cejudo's Talbot is inexperienced compared to Cejudo, it would be of a bad look. So Cejudo accepting this fight has got to be because he knows that maybe he wants to put a bit of pressure on himself, right? As opposed to him fighting, somebody really highly ranked and someone that people would think would win. But I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be tough to gauge kind of Cejudo, but seems like Russell should be his path to victory. And I'd like to think he'd be motivated to get the win. I don't know. I'm going Cejudo by that's my pick.
I'm going to say the same. It's interesting. I think maybe 5-10 years ago, you would have seen a retirement fight like this where the guy that was retiring would have a significant amount of in like the matchmaking that goes on. Now, say, oh, like Henry must see a path to victory against Talbot, but it doesn't really work that way anymore. So
Not for Cejudo.
But I think it almost makes me feel like and I almost feel like UFC and their brain may like this matchup for some reason for Patr. I don't want a guy going out the door beating a guy that's got a lot of potential. So maybe they know something we don't, but I am going to lean by decision to be the spoiler.
Yeah, if you want a quote unquote easy entry for Talbot to what is Cejudo these days? Let me look at it. So Cejudo's at number 10. So if you want quote unquote easy entry, is that the easiest entry for him in the top 10? Maybe in terms of name value, because I guess name value wise, a lot of good guys in the top 15 that don't have massive names, like Marcus McGee's not a massive name, Kyler Phillips, Vinicius Oliveira. These are tough fights, right? These are not massive names. Mario Batista, maybe Cheeto, maybe Stylist. I don't know. Like you said, I don't know. Maybe they something in this Cejudo fight.
I think like you said, I think Cheeto or Font, but he kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the time when he fought versus this fight was booked and he's coming off a loss. So I get it. I get it from the promotion standpoint, but yeah, I think it's top 3 easiest fights in the rankings that he had.
Yeah. Well, but kicking off the main card, Jan Blachowicz versus the Hitman, Bogdan Skov. I like this fight. Jan's pretty much fought everybody at heavyweight, and this is a nice, and he's another one that coming off of split decision to Magomed Ankalaev, weird title fight, and then split decision to Alex, and then has that long layoff, loses to Goldberg, who looks like he could be the number 1 contender now, versus complete opposite career trajectory and Guskov on a nice win streak, finish streak. Guys finished every single fight in his professional career, but on a nice win streak. Again, that's another guy who went up a big step in competition, but light heavyweight is in the deep, right? So going from Elikana to Krylov, I'm not super mad about that, right? Like light heavyweight could use a star. But what do you think? This is again one of those things where Jan would give you the y'all must have forgot. Why do I feel like he's an underdog? Because that seems to be the theme. I'm gonna look right now, but I just feel like he's an underdog. Oh, wait. minus 115 Blachowicz, minus 105 Gustav. That makes him like the slightest of right?
Yeah. It's funny because, like, of Jan, right? We haven't seen him for a while, or we haven't seen him consistently for a while. He had the injury, he had close losses, but it's one of those careers that I think even in the late stages at his age, like a few little things, if they had gone different, he would be like rolling right now, right? Like he had those close fights. The knee injury, or I think it was knee or shoulder, I forget. The injury he had was too bad, especially for somebody at that age who was trying to remain kind of in that title conversation as somebody that had held the title not too long ago. You know, it's so hard to predict somebody's fights when they're of the same, you know, of his age. So I am going to with him. I think people may be overlooking him and putting too much weight into somebody who's rolling, but doing so at a bit of a lower level. Like the Krylov win was good, but I also think you got to remember there's a big step up, I think, between like these prelim guys and like a middle tier starting to get in the rankings sort of guy like Krylov, and then like the guys who've always been there, that have fought 5-round fights, that have fought in the world consistently, who have held titles, fought for titles. So I am going to lean with Blachowicz, but Guskov has some freaky power. It really only takes one. Light heavyweight is almost as difficult to predict as heavyweight with those sort of intangibles. And Guskov's look great. I think we need guys like in this division that's clearly always in the route. His team's been rolling. Gore MMA out of Moscow has had a great year and a half, 2 years. So he could go out and win and one punch Jan. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, but I am going to lean with Blachowicz. I think people are overlooking him, looking at his record on paper, looking at his age, which has always been a little bit older, I think, than guys at the certain points in his career, right? Like he was an older champion, things like that. So I'm going to look at him, not necessarily confidently, but I think he gets done.
I agree. I'm picking him too, and I always talk about, I know Guskov's not undefeated. He was on a nice winning streak, and then enters UFC, loses to by submission. I have to nitpick when I break these things down, especially when you don't have a lot to look at. Rising contenders are a little bit tough, right? The level of competition isn't that great, and then they start fighting the experienced guys. Jan's got a very good ground game. He obviously used it against Israel Adesanya to full effect, and he's usually a smart guy with his game plans, and I feel like that's the fight, and I feel like he's a good enough grappler to beat Guskov by decision. So I pick, let's see the individual odds. Blachowicz by decision, that plus 225. Interesting. I think I like that. How about you?
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, I think that's pretty on brand in my brain. You know, I think Guskov could get it done inside the distance. I mean, either one of them could, right? But I think he's probably maybe a little bit more likely. But I kind of think this fight will end one way or the other inside the distance by TKO.
Okay, so Blachowicz by TKO would be plus 300, and then by TKO or KO would be plus 200, and then Blachowicz by submission would be plus 650.
Yeah, that's actually kind of an interesting one. Have Guskov really hit the ground? I think.
He lost to Volkan by submission.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm nitpicking at. Actually, what I'm looking at, but it's like sometimes too much to look at, right? Like cleaning out everybody and finishing them, like it's tough. But Blachowicz does have wins by submission on his record, but I gotta believe those early. I don't even remember a UFC submission. Nikita Krylov way back in the day, but outside of that, like he's not your typical Devin Clark, if you rewind way back. But as of late, at least, he hasn't exactly been the submission guy. I think a lot of those submission Blachowicz came early in his career pre-UFC. But yeah, I like the fight. I think it's a very fun main card opener, and we got 10 to go before the fight start. No, are we starting at 6 p.m. Eastern or 6:30?
6, right? Double check that.
Yeah. 6, but either way, to give us time to prep for the fights. But some really fun fights on the prelims. What stands out for you? For me, Nazim Sadykhov, that's my fight to watch. I've been covering Sadykhov for a while. A lot of people remember he went 2, didn't get re-signed. He by Ali Abdelaziz, the powerful Ali Abdelaziz, and re-signed. The Paris event helped him a lot. The fact UFC were going to Paris, he ends up getting a new and really just flying from there. I don't think a lot of people expected Ziam to go on the run that he did, because after he lost McKinney quickly by submission, McKinney, who also fights on this card, had that win over Figlak, which was a good Paris. He had a knockdown. I think the knock-on was not finishing fights, but then he gets the knockout Vola, and then beats Mike Davis on a really nice run. And then Sadikov is awesome. Like, this is another guy who's had the weird draw, Slava Claus, but he's had some, a lot of finishes. This guy's that's my fight to watch. How about you? What stands out for you at the prelims?
Yeah, I mean, the McKinney-Duncan fight is just a car crash. I know guys have kind of wanted this one for a while. They've called each other out. So I love this fight. I think it's one that, having seen both guys fight, right? McKinney's like a do-or-die gunslinger, and Duncan has the ability to these real back-and-forth sort of wars and come back to the brink of defeat at times. I think on paper, it has fight of the night written all over it. It can last that long, right? If somebody doesn't just get slaughtered. So I love that fight. I don't think it can potentially even remotely be boring. So that's my prelim pick for one to watch.
Well, how about biggest favorite of the night in Mansour Abdelmalek, minus 1,400 favorite over Tricoli, who's at plus 800. But I'm picking Mansour as well, but pretty heavy favorite.
Tricoli's been well at the poker table, World Series of Poker. I think he came in 8th or something. So even if it doesn't work out, if he loses this,
what do you think he has his on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. We'll have to go under investigation or something. But answers look great. I mean, great wrestler. He's kind of putting the rest of his game together as well. And they're keeping him active. They seem to like to book him. I feel like we've seen him a lot in a short period of time. So, fourth fight in the last 13 months. So somebody that they're probably pretty high on as well.
Yeah, and shout out to Edson Barbosa. Still at it. He's plus 370 underdog, though, against minus 500 favored Turner, a guy who had so much potential and then, decided to take some time off. I mean, lost 4 out of his last 5. That fight over King Green was amazing, but in the fight with Moicano was a little weird. He got the knockdown, walked away, and then ended up losing. Gets submitted pretty quickly by Bahamondes, but for him to come back, he's always a guy who's had a ton of potential. 9, I don't feel like that's a reflective of how good he is, but I think it's fantastic matchmaking to put him up against Edson Barbosa, because both guys are, kind of really in a need for a win, right? Barbosa's on a losing skid as well. This guy's at it for forever, 39 years old, still ever so entertaining. So I feel like at least I hope that this fight's going to get the best out of both of them, but an exciting fight nonetheless. Mason Karina Silva, you mentioned Terrence McKinney, Chris Duncan, Grant Dawson. That loss to Green really hurt him, because this is a guy who could never really get high-ranked opponents, right? Quick loss to King Green is not help his case, but that's another fight to look out. How do you see that one? I suppose statistically that Dawson would be the favorite. Let me look here. Grant Dawson, where are we? Oh, I need to scroll down. Yeah, but I picked him. Yeah, he's got to be the. Where are we? Yeah, minus against Manuel Torres. But yeah, I like Dawson. I think he's very good. Torres is fun. And, if we're gonna nitpick, going back to the nitpick and Dawson getting caught by King Green, maybe somebody's gonna want to pour in some money on Torres. But I think Grant's very good, and I think his wrestling job done here.
Yeah, it's actually kind of insane, like how Dawson has had so much success in the UFC, and he really hasn't gotten like marquee matchups. Like, he's 11-1-1 in the UFC. He's had multiple 3-fight win streaks, and seems like he always gets guys that are like maybe sitting in the 20 to 25 sort of ranking at any given time. So maybe this will be the match that I think this will be the first. He had one more. He had, when he started his UFC career, 5 in a row. But I was going to say maybe 4 is the magic for him. Maybe that will get him kind of a more, name impact sort of fighter. I do dig this fight. Torres is a lot of fun. I'm going to lean with Dawson, but I think Torres is definitely a live dog. I think he's got some power, and maybe somebody that's overlooked in this division as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's a lot of fun, and I think he's got to be very cautious, and I think he knows it. So my the most entertaining Dawson win, which is not going to help him a lot, right? Because you feel he needs maybe some heavy ground and pound. Not too long ago. What was that win that he picked up? The TKO
with Dawson.
No, yeah, Rafa Garcia, right?
Garcia, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting fight, clash of styles. Actually, Fares Ziam is the favorite over Sadikov. I don't expect that because I feel like Ziam's been underestimated for life. 210 favorite over Sadikov. I believe you picked Sadikov.
I did, and you got to think too. Like they were going to give Nazim Matej Amrod the headliner at one point Apex, and that ended up kind of fizzling out when stepped in against. So kind of interesting. You go from a fight, top 5 sort of ranking out of, or being definitely in the top 10, and then now you're on the prelims fighting a guy who's kind of another, savage from the, kind of the under the radar savage, and now you're an dog. So it's interesting how this game works.
Yeah, and Ziam, I've spoken to a couple of times recently, and he just didn't want to talk to 15-ranked guy. He's like, I'm not ready. He's looking back at his past, the losses to McKinney and whatnot, and he said, if those guys can do this to me, then what are the top guys? Which is very interesting and humble way to put things. Is you see the guys jump on the opportunities in the rankings, regardless of whether they feel they're ready or not. So that perspective from ZM is interesting, and you guy in Sadikov who's not ranked but really good. It's tough. It's a tough fight for ZM as well. So I respect his mentality, but very interesting because he doubled down on it as well when I asked him to get his thoughts on it. Sometimes they'll open up a little bit more when it's French media, their native tongue. But nonetheless, I think big things for the winner here. Even though they're unranked, I feel like this fight is going to do wonders for both, because it's a great fight. But yeah, how about shout out to Vettori, one of my favorite people to interview in the early games against Bruno Ferreira. He's been an interesting one as well because he's a tough guy and he's fought like everybody, right? But just hasn't had the results. Let's see if he's an underdog or not here. He's a favorite, -120 favorite over Ferreira, +100. Who do you have in that one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Vettori.
Yeah.
Ferreira's a lot of fun. I mean, he's just a highlight machine. He's better than, we've seen him just blow guys out of the water on the prelims, and we've also seen him lose. But I just think Vettori taking that step down in competition that I don't think a lot of vets get. Sometimes they seem to never, especially guys that have or challenged for the title, they don't get to take the big step back. And I think that's what we're seeing here. So even though Vettori hasn't looked necessarily great in the last couple, I think that taking that step more towards the middle of the division, upper middle, will be very evident when he gets in there. He's fun
for the middleweight division, I think, especially the big guys in the division. He's fought all of them. Look at that: Allen, Brandon, Roman Dolce, Jared Cannonier, Robert Whitaker, Paulo Ezra, Adesanya, Kevin Holland, Jack Herman. This guy's schedule has been crazy. He's fun for everybody, but he's definitely fun for the division. All right, let's wrap up with this. I always do this. Who give bonus winners for the night?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm going to say fight of the night will be Duncan and no, you know what we're going to say? I'm going to say Pantoja and Van, gets to be kind of a classic, right? Like we saw with Van and Royval, those sort of vibes. That wins fight of the night. Performance. Tough. Unfortunately, I might say Jalen, for us, Barboza fans, I might say Jalen Turner gets one. And then the other one, I'll say, goes to the winner of McKinney and Duncan. I'll say that I think Duncan gets it done. All
right, maybe Mansour Abdelmalek as well, since he's a
massive
favorite.
Massive favorite. Layup for a finish. So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Nolan, appreciate you joining me. Thank you guys for joining us for the final, not the final preview show, but the pay-per-view preview show. Let's put it that way. Don't forget to join George and Ghost for the watch along. They go live at 8 p.m. Eastern. Join them. Have fun. We've got Mike Bond and Ken Hathaway on site. We're going to wrap up. Not the final event of the year. We've got one next week before the big break, but final pay-per-view of the year. Appreciate you guys joining and enjoy the fights.